My dad let me fend for myself since I was 12, now his wife wants me to take care for her kids. But I made sure they'd regret ever asking. When I was about 12 years old, my life changed in ways I didn't expect. My mom was sick, really sick, with cancer, and she couldn't handle the small stuff like packing lunches anymore. It wasn't a big deal at the time. I was old enough to know how to make a sandwich and pack a few snacks. So, I started doing it myself. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. After she passed, things just stayed that way. My dad wasn't around much during the day, and he never made lunches for me. In fact, I don't think he even knew what I was eating half the time. He just said, "You're old enough to handle it," and left it at that. So, I kept packing my own lunch, and it became my routine: grab a couple of things from the fridge, throw them in a bag, and go. No big deal, right? Fast forward a few years, and I'm 16 years old, still making my own lunches, still taking care of myself. But now, things are different. My dad remarried a couple of years ago to a woman named Sarah. She has 3 kids from her previous marriage, twin boys who are about 6 years old and an 11-year-old daughter. At first, I didn't think much of them moving in. It was weird having more people in the house, but it wasn't like they were my problem. I had my room, my space, and I was doing my own thing. But then, about a year ago, Sarah got this idea in her head that since I was already making my own lunch, I should make lunch for her kids too. She said it would help out and streamline everything so she wouldn't have to do it. I remember the first time she asked me. I thought she was joking. Seriously, why would I make lunch for her kids? I don't even know them that well, and they're not my responsibility. But she wasn't joking. She really expected me to do it. I told her no, flat out. I didn't feel bad about it either. I'm already making my own lunch because my dad can't be bothered, so why would I add more work to my day? Plus, I have school and a part-time job to juggle. I don't have time to be running around packing lunches for a bunch of kids. I didn't think it was a big deal. They're her kids, right? It's not on me to take care of them. Apparently, Sarah thought differently. She was shocked that I said no. She looked at me like I had just insulted her or something. She started going off about how it was crazy that I wouldn't want to help out my siblings. That's what she called them, my siblings. But to be real, I don't see them like that. I barely know these kids, and they're definitely not my siblings. We're not even close. After that first argument, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured she'd get over it and realize it wasn't my job to take care of her kids. But nope, she went straight to my dad, probably thinking he'd back her up. Of course, my dad doesn't like conflict, so he just half agreed with her. He said something like, "It wouldn't hurt to help out a little. You know, you're part of the family now." I could feel myself getting mad. I'm part of the family now? Since when? Nobody asked me how I felt about having 3 strangers living in my house. But fine, whatever. I still said no. I wasn't budging on this. Sarah was obviously pissed, but I didn't care. I knew if I gave in once, I'd be making lunches for the rest of my life. Things got awkward after that. Every time Sarah saw me making my lunch, she'd give me this look, like she was silently judging me for not helping. It's not like I'm heartless or anything. If it was an emergency or something, sure, I'd help. But this? This was just her trying to get out of doing her own job as a mom. I wasn't having it. Then she started with the guilt trips. She'd say stuff like, "It must be nice to only have to worry about yourself," or "It's so selfish to not want to help your family." She even started using her kids to get to me. One morning, the twins came up to me and asked, "Why don't you make our lunch? Mommy said you're good at it." That made me so mad. How are you going to drag your kids into this just to make me feel bad? I wasn't falling for it, though. I just said, "Ask your mom. She's the one in charge, not me." That didn't go over well. Sarah got even more passive-aggressive after that. If I was in the kitchen making lunch, she'd purposely make a huge mess and leave it for me to clean up, or she'd leave the fridge open so stuff would go bad quicker. It was ridiculous. I just ignored it and kept doing my thing. The real kicker, though, was when she started trying to pawn her kids off on me more and more. She'd say stuff like, "I'm so busy. Can you watch the twins for a bit? Or I need to run errands. Can you help them with their homework?" It's like, no, I have my own life. I'm not a built-in babysitter. I have school, work, and my own stuff to deal with. Why should I take on more? Then one day, she took things to a whole new level. I was in the middle of making my lunch when she came into the kitchen and asked me straight up, "Why won't you just help out with the kids' lunches? It's not that big of a deal." I told her again that it's not my job and I don't have time. She looked frustrated and said, "It's just lunch. You're already doing it for yourself. Why not for them?" I snapped a little at that point. I said, Because they're your kids, not mine. I'm not their dad, I'm not their mom, and I'm not here to make up for what you're not doing. I could tell by her face that she wasn't expecting that. She just stood there for a minute, not saying anything, then turned around and walked out. I thought that was the end of it, but boy, was I wrong. After that last argument with Sarah, I thought maybe she'd back off for a while. I was dead wrong. Things didn't calm down at all. If anything, she got more persistent, almost like she was on a mission to make me give in. And of course, she went straight to my dad again. This time, though, it wasn't just a casual suggestion. She came at him full force, saying that I needed to start helping more around the house and doing my part for the family. I could hear them arguing in the living room while I was in my room. Sarah was doing most of the talking, and my dad, as usual, was just kind of agreeing with her in that passive way he always does when he doesn't want to deal with a situation. I knew what was coming before my dad even knocked on my door. He came in, sat on the edge of my bed, and did that thing where he sighs before he talks, like he's about to drop some heavy news. But it's never really heavy, just annoying. Look, he started, rubbing his hands together, Sarah's got a point, you know. It wouldn't hurt for you to help out more around here. Help with what? I asked, knowing exactly where this was going but not in the mood to make it easy for him. He kind of hesitated, which told me he didn't really want to have this conversation either, but he was too far in now. Well, the kids, he said. You know, making their lunches, helping Sarah when she's busy. You're already making your own lunch, right? I just stared at him for a second. Yeah, my own lunch. For me. Not for anyone else. I know, he said, like he was trying to smooth things over before it got heated. But you're part of this family now, and Sarah's got a lot on her plate. It wouldn't hurt for you to step up a little. This is where I lost my patience. Dad, I'm already stepping up. I make my own lunches, I work part-time, I take care of my own stuff. Why do I need to take on more? They're not my kids. Sarah married you, not me. He didn't like that. His whole expression changed, and he went from trying to be all calm and diplomatic to being irritated. This is about being part of the family, not just doing the bare minimum. It's not like we're asking you to raise the kids. Just help out. It's what families do. I was getting pretty angry at this point, and I knew if I didn't watch it, things would blow up. But I couldn't just let it slide. You and Sarah had these kids, not me, I said. If you want help with them, hire a babysitter or something. I've got my own life, and I'm not here to take over for what you two aren't doing. He didn't say anything for a minute, just sat there like he was processing what I said. Then he got up, gave me the disappointed dad look, and walked out of the room. I knew this wasn't the end of it. Sarah was probably waiting downstairs for the report, and whatever I said wasn't going to make her happy. Things got really awkward after that. It was like every time I walked into the kitchen, Sarah was there, hovering, watching me. She didn't even try to hide her frustration. She'd make little comments under her breath, like, must be nice to only worry about yourself, or some people don't know what family means. I just ignored it. I wasn't going to engage with her passive-aggressive nonsense. I knew if I did, it would just turn into another argument, and I didn't have the energy for that. Then she pulled the guilt trip move. One day, I'm in the kitchen packing my lunch for the next day, and she comes in with the twins. She's all like, oh, boys, don't you wish you had a big brother who cared enough to help out and make you lunch? I stopped what I was doing and looked right at her. I wasn't having it. That's not fair, and you know it, I said. You can't make me responsible for them. She didn't like that. She turned to the boys and said, why don't you two go play? I need to have a grown-up talk with your brother. As soon as they left, she turned on me. You know, it's not just about the lunches. It's about the fact that you don't even want to help. It's selfish. That word, selfish, set me off. Selfish? I'm the one making my own food and paying for it with my own money. I'm not asking anyone to take care of me. If anyone's selfish here, it's you for trying to dump your responsibilities on me. She wasn't expecting me to push back that hard. She looked a little shocked at first but quickly recovered. I work full-time. I'm raising 3 kids, and I'm trying to make this house run smoothly. The least you could do is step up and be part of the family. I shook my head. Sarah, I'm part of the family, but that doesn't mean I have to take on your job. You and Dad decided to have these kids. You and Dad should be the ones taking care of them. I'm doing more than enough by taking care of myself. She didn't have a comeback for that, so she just gave me this angry look and left the room. I thought maybe that would be the end of it for the day, but of course, it wasn't. Later that night, I overheard Sarah talking to my dad again. She was laying it on thick about how I didn't care about the family, how I was only thinking about myself, and how it was making her life so much harder. I knew my dad would come back to me about it, and sure enough, the next day, he knocked on my door again. Listen, he started, I get it. You don't feel like it's your responsibility to take care of the kids. But we're all living under the same roof, and it would be nice if you could just help out every now and then. It's not a big ask. At this point, I was just tired of the whole thing. Dad, it is a big ask. I already do more than enough around here. If Sarah needs help, she should talk to you, not me. I'm not going to be a replacement parent. He looked frustrated but didn't push it any further. I think he knew I wasn't going to back down, and maybe he didn't want to deal with another argument. From that point on, things were tense. Every time I went into the kitchen, I felt like Sarah was watching me, waiting for me to slip up or finally cave in and do what she wanted. But I wasn't going to. This wasn't my problem to solve, and the more they tried to force it on me, the more I resisted. So, after that last talk with my dad, I figured things couldn't get much worse. Sarah was mad, my dad was frustrated, and I was just trying to keep my head down and stay out of the drama. But of course, they couldn't let it go. Things took another turn, and this time, it wasn't about lunch anymore, it was about dinner. It started one evening when I was in the kitchen making myself something to eat. By now, I'd gotten used to cooking my own meals because I didn't really want to sit down with Sarah and my dad. Things were just too tense, and honestly, I'd rather avoid that awkward family dinner. Plus, I'd been paying for my own food with the money I made from my part-time job. I didn't want to hear any complaints about how I wasn't contributing to the household or whatever. I was making something simple, some chicken and rice with veggies. Nothing fancy, but it was enough for me. I was halfway through cooking when Sarah walked in with the kids. They were hungry, I guess, expecting dinner to be ready. But obviously, I hadn't made anything for them. Sarah looked at what I was cooking and then turned to me, all annoyed. "Are you not making dinner for everyone?" she asked, like I was supposed to just know that's what she wanted. I looked at her and said, "No, this is for me. You didn't ask me to make anything for everyone." She stared at me for a second, clearly not happy with that answer. "You're cooking for yourself, but you couldn't think to make enough for the kids too?" she snapped. "They're hungry." I could feel myself getting frustrated already, but I tried to stay calm. "I'm not their parent, Sarah. I'm just making dinner for me. You can make something for them, or Dad can. It's not my responsibility." That set her off. She started going off about how selfish I was, how I never thought about anyone else, and how I was splitting the family by refusing to help. It was the same speech I'd heard before, but this time, it was more intense because now she had the kids standing there, looking at me like I'd done something wrong. I just stood there, letting her rant, because honestly, what was I supposed to say? I wasn't going to start making dinner for everyone just because she was mad at me. I knew if I gave in, it would never end. When she finally stopped, I just said, "Look, if you want me to cook for everyone, you need to ask me ahead of time. I'm not going to just start making meals for the whole family because you expect it." She didn't like that answer either. "I shouldn't have to ask you," she snapped. "You live here. You should want to help." At that point, I was done. I turned back to my food, finished cooking, and sat down to eat at the kitchen table. Sarah stormed out of the kitchen with the kids, muttering under her breath about how I was impossible and how she couldn't believe I didn't care about them. I just ignored it. I was tired of the whole situation, and I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into doing something I didn't want to do. But of course, things didn't stop there. The next day, Sarah and my dad had another talk with me. This time, they both sat me down in the living room, like it was some kind of intervention. I already knew what was coming. "We need to talk about the way you've been acting lately," my dad started, looking all serious. I leaned back on the couch and crossed my arms. "What about it?" Sarah jumped in right away. "You're refusing to help out with anything around the house. You won't make lunch for the kids, you won't make dinner, and now you're even buying your own groceries and making your own meals, like you're not part of the family." "That's because I'm not their parent," I shot back. "I'm not responsible for making sure they eat. That's your job, not mine." My dad sighed, clearly getting frustrated. "We're not saying you're their parent, but we are a family. We all live here, and it wouldn't kill you to pitch in once in a while." "I do pitch in," I said, raising my voice a little. "I take care of my own stuff. I make my own food, and I pay for it with my own money. I'm not asking you guys for anything, so why do I have to take on more?" Sarah cut in again. "Because you're part of this household. It's not about who's asking for what. It's about contributing and being part of the family." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. "I am contributing by not relying on you guys for anything. If I wasn't making my own meals, you'd complain about that too. So what's the issue?" The issue, apparently, was that they wanted me to help out with the kids more. It wasn't enough that I was already making my own meals. They wanted me to make theirs too. They wanted me to take on more responsibilities, but only the ones they didn't feel like doing themselves. I'm not their babysitter, I said, and I'm not their cook. I've already told you that I'm not going to start making their meals because you think I should. My dad was clearly losing his patience at this point. We're not asking you to be their babysitter, but they're part of this family, and so are you. Why is it so hard for you to understand that helping out with them isn't a big deal? I shook my head. Because it is a big deal. I'm not going to take on your responsibilities. If you can't take care of them, that's on you, not me. The conversation didn't really go anywhere after that. My dad and Sarah kept trying to guilt me into helping more, but I wasn't budging. I wasn't going to let them put more on my plate when I was already handling my own stuff. I knew if I gave in, even a little, it would never stop. They'd keep piling on more and more until I was basically doing everything for them. So, I stood my ground. I kept making my own dinners, buying my own groceries, and doing my own thing. And of course, they kept giving me the cold shoulder. Sarah stopped talking to me unless she absolutely had to, and my dad just looked disappointed every time he saw me. But I wasn't going to let that change my mind. The tension in the house was pretty thick after that. Every time I went into the kitchen to make something, I felt like they were watching me, waiting for me to slip up or finally give in. But I didn't. I kept doing what I needed to do for myself, and I didn't let them guilt me into anything else. It wasn't easy living like that, but I knew it was better than letting them push me around. At least this way, I had control over my own life, even if things were a little awkward. I figured eventually they'd either get over it or find some other way to deal with the situation. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to be their built-in chef or babysitter, no matter how much they tried to guilt me into it. So, after all the arguing and tension, you'd think things would calm down, right? But no, of course not. In fact, things somehow managed to get even worse. I was doing my best to stay out of the way, keep my head down, and just take care of myself. I mean, I didn't see why that was so hard for them to understand. I wasn't asking for anything from Sarah or my dad, so why couldn't they just let me be? Anyway, it all came to a head one day when Sarah decided to take things to a new level. I'm in my room, doing some homework after school, and I hear my dad and Sarah talking downstairs. I couldn't really make out the words, but I could tell it was about me. You know when people's voices are just on that edge, where they're talking quietly but there's this tense energy behind it. Yeah, it was like that. I didn't think much of it at first because, honestly, I'd gotten used to them complaining about me. But then, about 20 minutes later, Sarah comes upstairs and knocks on my door. I already knew this wasn't going to be good. She walks in, doesn't even ask if it's okay, and says, "We need to talk." Here we go again, I thought. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my cool. About what? She sits down on the edge of my bed and gives me this serious look. "It's about the kids," she starts. "I can't keep doing everything by myself. I need help, and your dad agrees." I rolled my eyes internally. We've had this conversation like a million times, but apparently, she hadn't gotten the message yet. "I've told you before, Sarah, I'm not responsible for the kids. You and Dad are." That didn't sit well with her. She looked like she was about to lose it, but she held it together, barely. "I understand that they're not your kids, but we're all living here together, and as a family, we should be helping each other out." I couldn't help it, I had to call her out. "Yeah, but it's not really helping each other out when you're just trying to dump everything on me. I'm not here to make your life easier." That's when she went for the emotional guilt trip again. "Do you really want the kids to go without lunch or dinner because you're refusing to help? What kind of example are you setting for them?" Now, this was where I had to draw the line. "Sarah, I'm not refusing to help with things that are actually my responsibility. But your kids' meals? That's on you. You're their mom. I didn't sign up to take care of them." She was quiet for a second, and I thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. But no, she hit me with, "If you don't want to be part of this family, then maybe you should just start taking care of yourself entirely." I blinked at her, confused. What's that supposed to mean? She crossed her arms and looked at me like she was laying down some big ultimatum. "If you're not going to help out with the kids, then you don't get to eat the food in this house that we buy. You're either part of the family, or you're not." I just stared at her for a moment, trying to process what she'd just said. She was seriously telling me that if I didn't start cooking for her kids, I wasn't allowed to eat anything they bought. This was ridiculous. I stood up and faced her. "Fine," I said, not backing down. "I've been paying for my own food anyway. I'll keep doing that. But don't expect me to take care of your kids just because you don't feel like doing it." She looked a little surprised that I wasn't backing down, but I think she was too mad to care. "If that's how you want it, fine," she said, standing up and walking toward the door. But don't come crying to us when things get hard. I rolled my eyes as she left. Don't worry, I won't. So, from that point on, I basically started living like a roommate in my own house. I'd buy my own groceries, cook my own meals, and pretty much stay out of their way. It was weird, though, because every time I came into the kitchen to make something, Sarah or my dad would be there, just giving me this look, you know, the kind of look like they're waiting for you to mess up or admit that you're wrong. But I wasn't wrong, and I wasn't about to let them push me around. One night, I came home from work and saw Sarah in the kitchen, but something was off. The kitchen was a complete disaster. There were dirty dishes everywhere, the counters were a mess, and it looked like no one had cleaned up after dinner. Normally, I would just go in, do my thing, and get out, but this time, I could feel the tension building. I started making my dinner quietly, ignoring the mess, when Sarah came in and leaned against the counter. "It would be nice if you could help clean up," she said, not even looking at me. I didn't even turn around. I didn't make the mess. Why should I clean it up? She sighed loudly, like I was being unreasonable. Because that's what people in a family do. They help each other out. I turned to face her, setting my spoon down. No, what people in a family do is take responsibility for their own messes. I didn't make this mess, so I'm not cleaning it up. She glared at me, clearly pissed, but didn't say anything. She just left the kitchen, and I went back to cooking. It felt like every interaction with her now was some kind of battle, but I wasn't going to cave. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into doing more than my fair share. After I finished eating, I cleaned up my own stuff and went back to my room. I knew things were only going to get worse from here, but I didn't care. I was doing what I had to do to survive in this house, and if they didn't like it, that was their problem. The next few days were more of the same, awkward silences, cold stares, and passive-aggressive comments. But honestly, I was used to it by now. I just kept my head down, kept doing my own thing, and stayed out of their way as much as possible. I knew I couldn't change how they felt about me, but I could control how I handled it. And as far as I was concerned, I was doing just fine. By the time Monday rolled around, things were already tense, but I didn't expect what happened next. I had been home for a few hours, just doing my own thing. I had the house to myself for a bit, so I decided to make a real dinner for once, something decent, not just the usual quick meal I throw together. I was in the kitchen, cooking up some pasta with homemade sauce, maybe some garlic bread on the side. It was nothing fancy, but I was feeling good about it. I was halfway through eating when Sarah came home with her kids. I could hear them coming in, the sound of bags dropping on the floor, the usual chaos, but then it got real quiet. I didn't think much of it at first, just kept eating. Then Sarah walked into the kitchen, and the look on her face told me something was about to go down. She glanced at the food on the table and then at me, clearly not happy. "Did you make enough for the kids?" she asked, like she already knew the answer. I shook my head. "Nope, just made dinner for myself." That was the wrong answer. She snapped, her voice rising. "You're seriously just going to sit there and eat while my kids are starving?" I looked at her, trying not to roll my eyes. "Your kids are not starving, Sarah. They just got home. And no, I didn't make them dinner because you never asked me to." She glared at me, her frustration boiling over. "I shouldn't have to ask you. You're in this house. You know they need to eat, but you only think about yourself. It's disgusting." I set down my fork, ready to argue, but I didn't even get a chance. She was already yelling, throwing all kinds of accusations at me, how I was selfish, how I didn't care about anyone but myself, how I was tearing the family apart by refusing to help. Her kids were standing in the doorway, watching the whole thing, which made it even more awkward. "I'm not their parent, Sarah," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's not my job to make sure they eat. That's on you and Dad. Don't you dare blame this on us," she shouted, her face red with anger. "You live here too. You're supposed to help out, be part of this family. But no, you'd rather sit here and make dinner just for yourself, like you're some kind of guest in this house." That last part really got to me. Guest? I'm not a guest. I've been living here my whole life. You and your kids are the ones who moved in, not me. I'm already taking care of myself, paying for my own groceries, cooking my own food. I'm not responsible for your kids. She lost it at that point. You think you're so grown up because you make your own food and pay for some groceries? You don't even know what real responsibility is. Try raising 3 kids by yourself, then you can talk about responsibility. I stood up, not willing to sit there and be yelled at anymore. That's not my problem, Sarah. You decided to have kids. You and Dad should be taking care of them, not me. I've done more than enough by staying out of your way and handling my own stuff. I'm not going to start being your live-in babysitter and cook just because you're overwhelmed. She didn't like that answer. She started calling me names, saying how I was worthless, how I wasn't even part of the family anymore, and how she hated living with me. It was honestly one of the ugliest arguments we'd ever had, and her kids were still standing there, listening to everything. I wasn't about to let her drag me down to her level, so I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I wasn't going to keep fighting. I went to my room, closed the door, and just tried to calm down. I could still hear her yelling downstairs, but I tuned it out as best I could. After a while, things got quiet again, and I figured she'd finally given up. But the next morning, things were even worse. I came downstairs to grab my breakfast before school, and Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, glaring at me. The kids were already eating, but there was this weird tension in the air. I just grabbed my stuff and went to leave when Sarah spoke up. "You're going to make dinner tonight," she said, her voice cold and demanding. I stopped and looked at her. "No, I'm not." "You're going to make dinner for the kids tonight," she repeated, ignoring what I'd said. "If you don't expect to eat anything in this house ever again." I almost laughed at how ridiculous that sounded. "Sarah, I already buy my own food. What are you even talking about?" She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm serious. If you won't contribute to this family, then you're not part of it. Don't touch any food in this house that we've bought. Don't expect any help from us. You're on your own from now on." I looked at her, realizing she was dead serious. She was really trying to punish me for not doing what she wanted. I just shook my head. "Fine. I'll keep buying my own food. I don't need anything from you guys anyway." I left for school without saying anything else. All day, I kept thinking about how insane things had gotten. It wasn't about lunch or dinner anymore, it was about control. Sarah wanted me to fall in line, to do what she said, and when I didn't, she was trying to make my life as difficult as possible. But I wasn't going to let her win. That night, I came home with a bag of groceries, made my own dinner again, and ignored the dirty looks from Sarah and my dad. I could tell they were waiting for me to cave, to give in and apologize, but I wasn't going to. I had my own life, my own responsibilities, and I wasn't going to let them guilt me into taking on theirs. As far as I was concerned, I was doing just fine without their help. The tension in the house was unbearable by this point. After everything with Sarah demanding I make dinner and threatening to cut me off from the family, things were just weird. I'd come home from school or work, and it felt like I was living with strangers. Nobody said anything to me unless they absolutely had to, and even then, it was short, clipped, and always with an attitude. Fine by me, honestly, less drama that way. But it all came to a head one Friday night. I had just gotten home from work and, as usual, went straight to the kitchen to make myself something to eat. I had my groceries in hand, and as soon as I walked in, I knew something was up. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table with my dad, and they both looked at me the second I walked through the door. It felt like they had been waiting for me. I put my groceries down and started unpacking them, just trying to act normal, but then Sarah stood up and said, "We need to talk." I didn't even turn around. "About what?" She crossed her arms, and my dad just sat there, looking all serious. "You're not contributing to this family," Sarah started, her voice all sharp and angry. "You're living here, using up space, but you're not helping out with anything, and I'm tired of it." I turned to face her. "I've told you already, I take care of myself. I make my own food, buy my own groceries, and stay out of your way. What more do you want?" She took a step closer, clearly not happy with my answer. "I want you to start being part of this family. That means helping out with the kids, making meals for everyone, and actually contributing." I couldn't help but shake my head. "I've been contributing. I'm not relying on you guys for anything. If anything, I'm making your lives easier by taking care of myself." But she wasn't having it. "That's not enough," she snapped. "You don't get to just live here and do the bare minimum. We're a family, and families help each other." At that point, my patience was gone. "Sarah, I'm not part of your family. I didn't ask for this. You and Dad decided to get married and bring 3 kids into this house. I didn't. I've done more than enough by staying out of your way and not causing problems. But I'm not going to take on your responsibilities." My dad finally spoke up, his voice quieter but still stern. "You're part of this family, whether you like it or not, and we expect you to act like it." I looked at him, and I realized something: they were never going to get it. No matter what I said, no matter how much I tried to explain myself, they were always going to expect me to take on more than I should. It wasn't about being fair or logical, it was about them wanting control. I let out a long breath. "You know what? If this is what being part of the family means, then I don't want any part of it. I'll keep doing my own thing, and you can keep doing yours." But I'm not going to let you guilt me into doing more than what's fair. Sarah glared at me, and my dad just shook his head. Fine, Sarah said, her voice cold. But don't expect us to help you with anything anymore. You're on your own. I just nodded. I already am. And with that, I grabbed my groceries, went back to my room, and shut the door.